Hello and welcome once again to another lecture on understanding and being able to analyze technically. From this point onward, we'll be diving deeper into the world of technical analysis. So, the first thing we'll be talking about after we have done some introductions in our previous lectures is the support and resistance, which is also called or known as the S and R level. You might come across the word S and R level in some places or while discussing with some traders. So, what do we understand by this support and resistance or S and R? You can see it is called S and R level, that is support and resistance level. Because of what? We understand shortly. Now, let's go into resistance. What do we understand by the word resistance? Resistance is simply a zone of multiple rejections where the market is expected to sell or to go short. So these points or zones where we keep seeing a push downward after an upward movement in price is what we call resistance. We are going to see a pictorial description shortly. So this is just like a definition of what resistance means. And then support is just like the opposite of this resistance. This is a zone of multiple rejections where the market is anticipated to buy from or to go long. So the points or zones where we keep seeing a push upward after a downward movement in price is called support. And we need to know that there must be a connection of 2 to 3 points when we are drawing this S and R level. We'll look at this shortly. But before we go on into understanding how to draw our resistance, our support, or how to see them on the chart, we need to understand few little things as well. So we need to understand that this resistance and support, they come in two types. So recently we discovered that for a resistance you can actually have an horizontal resistance and a trend line resistance, and at the same time for support you can have an horizontal support and a trend line support. Some of you will be surprised with this thing I'm saying. You are going to see that it is just a very simple thing. So now let's go ahead and try to understand how to draw or how to identify this resistance and support level. So the first thing we'll look at is the resistance. Now, we might have a zone like this. Let's call it our resistance zone. Resistance. So let's say this is resistance. So what happens at this point, at this resistance point, is that you are going to see a market that was initially bullish. This is a bullish market. I believe we must have talked about when a market is bullish. But at this point, we'll see a form of rejection. We see a form of rejection, and then the market can then start to sell. The market might then come back to that zone again and still sell. Then we'll continue seeing a sell like this format. So if you look at this particular zone now, this zone, we can see a touch here, a touch here, a touch here, and a touch here. It means this particular point, this particular zone in the market can be regarded as a resistance zone. That is, this is a zone that is forcing the market to move down or to sell downward after a previous upward in price action. This is an upward price action. That is, we are bullish here, we are in an uptrend. But when we got to this zone now, we started seeing sells. We started seeing sells. We started seeing sells. We started seeing the market pushing downward. So it means we as a trader, we are waiting for zones like this to take a sell from. We don't just sell from any point in the market. We wait for this kind of zone, which is a resistance zone, to take a sell from. I believe this is understood by this analogram. So now let's quickly look at the other one, which is the support zone. For the support, we are going to be in a bearish trend, which means the market is selling. The market is selling this way. But when we got to a point, we'll see rejection. We'll see a rejection. Probably will come back. We keep seeing buys again. The market comes back to that zone again. We still see another rejection for buys, for more buys. So now okay, now let's look at support zone. Let's assume we have a zone like this. We can simply call it support. Now this zone is expected to push price upward. Let's assume we've been selling, we're in a bearish market, we've been selling, but when we got to this zone, we saw a rejection, that is a push upward for buys. Now probably after taking some buys, we had a retracement, that is the market came back to retest the zone. We still see another push upward to see more buys. The market keep buying. Now it is evident from here that this particular zone is strong enough to push price upward. We can see a lot of retest, and we can see that price move upward from this particular zone. This initially was a bearish market. As you can see, this was a bearish market, and then we saw an upward movement in price after touching this particular zone. Now, while have I been saying zone all this while? The reason I've been saying zone is because initially when we were taught about support and resistance, we will be told to draw an horizontal line like this. Just draw a straight line. But over time we discover that the market will not just touch these lines and then buy. The market will play within zones. If you can see this one, this particular low now was not in the same line with this particular zone. If you look at this one now, this is another zone. For example, this zone might go as low as this another zone. So it is better to mark a zone that is about 10 pips or 15 pips in height. Just depends on the time zone that you are in. 10 to 20 pips. This is 30 pips. So I can decide to reduce it to like 20 pips. So let's see, this is still 24. So which means I want to play within this zone so that I won't be taken out of the market. Whenever probably I decide to now use line. If I use a line and I place my entry here and my stop loss here, this kind of buy now, I'll be taken out of it. But when I play with zone, it means anywhere I place my buy, I'll be safe. using that particular zone, I'll be safe. Let me assume I take a long entry from here now. I take a long entry from here. So this is my stop loss. My stop loss is here, and I take an entry from this zone. I'll be profitable. I will not be afraid of any loss. But now compare me taking my entry, let's say from this line, and placing my stop loss just some pips below that line. I will be taking out if I'm trying to take this particular long. So that is why we treat support and resistance now as zones. That is support zone and resistance zone. So that is just simple analogram of how a support and resistance looks like. But now, moving down to the second part of this support and resistance, we said we have the horizontal supports, the trend line support, the horizontal resistance, and the trend line resistance. What do we now mean by trend line resistance? It's just as simple as what we talked about earlier. Let's assume you have this and you have this. When we are in an uptrend, this is how the market is expected to move. Let's say in an uptrend, move from here, back down, up, down, up. Though we are not going to be seeing such kind of movement, we might be seeing some wavy movement like this, but for explanation's sake, we expect that we're having some movement like this. This in an uptrend, right? Now, if you look at this, you see that whenever the market touches somewhere around here, we have a push upward in price, and whenever the price touches here, we have a push downward. Whenever the price touches here again, we have a push upward. Now, this particular point that is pushing price upward is what we call support, but it is regarded as trend line support. You know, normally for our horizontal support, we believe that whenever the market comes here, we have a push upward, right? Whenever we touch, we have a push upward. The same thing is what we are experiencing with this. Whenever we touch here, we have a push upward. Whenever we touch here, we have a push upward. The same thing with our resistance. Let's assume we have horizontal resistance now. Horizontal resistance. For horizontal resistance, whenever we see the market moving upward, whenever we see the market moving upward and we touch this zone, we see a sell, we see a push downward. So we are regarding resistance with push downward and support with a push upward. So this is a trend line resistance. So this trend line, to get a trend line resistance and trend line support, we tend to draw these two trend lines to form a channel. Inside here is just like a channel where the buyers and sellers are taking trades. You know, you buy, you sell, you buy, you sell. So in an uptrend, we took this buy. This is like a retracement or correction. Took another buy. It means we can take another sell. The correction, we can take a sell for it and we buy again. So in as much as we have horizontal resistance and horizontal support, we have trend line resistance and trend line support as well. So this part of the lecture now is just to give to us the theoretical explanation of what resistance and support is all about. We explained the horizontal resistance, the horizontal support, the trend line resistance, and the trend line support. Now we are now going to look at the chart itself. how we are going to be able to spot this trend line resistance and support or draw them, and how we are going to be able to spot this horizontal resistance or horizontal support and how we can draw them using the zone and not just a line, because that is the modern way of trading resistance and support, which is why we call it the S and R level. So see you in the next lecture. Thank you.